Hey everyone, I'm watching the participants and we are now up to 91. It's kind of like the temperature outside. It just keeps ticking up, up, up. So we're really happy that everyone's showing up today. So, okay, we're at the Minority Clerkship Luncheon. Normally that's at the Below. Now it's at your home. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about what this new normal looks like for you. And we've got these amazing panelists, and I'm going to really toss out the questions and get out of the way. But what I do want to let you know, we want this to be interactive. So as we go through the different topics, if you've got questions, there's a Q&A section. If you could toss your questions in there, and then I can go through and I can pick them up as we keep going. So let's just jump right in. All right, Kenya, girl, we are in a whole new world. How has the practice of law changed for you?
I will say on a day-to-day basis, the practice is the same, the subject matter is a little different. Probably for many of us, our clients are not in our own cities anyway. So we are really communicating in the same way that we did before, a lot of phone. But now everyone wants to call something a virtual telephone conference. And I was like, we used to just do this by phone. Now it's a virtual meeting. So a lot of WebEx, a lot of Zoom. I think the biggest thing is people are really missing human contact and some kind of real communication with people. So things that we may have typically done just by a phone call, I am periodically just saying, okay, let's do a WebEx or Zoom so I can see your face and see you smile at me and me smile back, because the days can get very routine and a little lonely. So I think just responding to clients' needs to have some human contact. And I've had some social distance happy hours by the pool, 6 feet apart with a chair and a table per person, just looking for other ways to connect and still be safe.
What about you, Phil? How are you dealing with this new world?
You know, it's very similar to what Kenya described. I would say, you know, in the beginning of the pandemic, it was all COVID all the time, you know, not 24 hours a day, but it certainly felt like it at times. And the subject matter certainly has shifted from, obviously COVID is always top of mind and back of mind, but we also have other matters that, you know, some transactions that had been pencils down for a moment and then now back to normal. And those transactions are ongoing. So, and certainly COVID slowed them down initially, but it's gotten back to being all hands on deck. So for that type of subject matter, those practice areas, that has continued on. And I would say subject matter wise, it's just, I mean, the area that we practice in is quite varied and it's always different and always something new, and it just continues to be that way. But I'll echo what Kenya said about just the human interaction being lost, and Zoom and conference calls, all of that is great, but it can only do so much. And being able to, one of the benefits of working in a big firm is you get to just drop into someone's office and say hi and see how they're doing. Our office is technically open, but very few people go in unless they absolutely need to. I have 2 young children, so I a lot of times need to get some peace and quiet to work. And when I that's right. Yeah. And so it's just it's very quiet and eerie when going in. You just don't get to interact the way you're used to. So that benefit of getting to talk to folks, whether it's about work or something social, it's different. We definitely have happy hour Zoom calls and or WebEx calls, but it's still not the same. But it's a new normal that we're all adjusting to.
Yeah, and then Stephanie, anything to add? How are you? You doing better than us in this new normal or what? You look fat.
Unfortunately, I'm managing pretty similar. I've got 2 young kids at home too, but I have been at home for most of the time. I've gone in a few times. Our office is open. But I will say I do employment law. And so in the beginning, they're just It felt like the days were starting earlier and ending later because clients had a lot of questions about what do I do? And now that's switching to, I want to start bringing people back. How do I do that safely? How do I make sure that, I'm complying with my obligations? So I think the subject matter has definitely been different. And then we've had to be more intentional about having those meetings like Kenya, things that we used to do by phone, everything is video.
Yeah.
So similar changes to Phil and Kenya.
So before I go over to Judge Redmond, let's real quick, Kenya, and can we go through starting with Kenya? Can you tell a little bit about what firm, what's your practice area, so the listeners.
Oh, we jumped right in, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. So they know kind of who you all are.
Okay, well, I'm a partner at Catton. I am in the healthcare regulatory practice. I'm also the chair of our women's initiative at the firm. And our day-to-day in healthcare, especially on the regulatory and operational side, has been, as you can imagine, from the beginning when people were trying to get testing up, and we started working with companies that were doing drive-through testing across the country, working with HHS and funding and all of that. So from the healthcare perspective, our day-to-day transactions kind of, as Phil said, slowed down a little bit. Now they're dealing with COVID and transactions and it's just a very challenging time where we just have to be reactive. There's sometimes, where they just don't have time to deal with us. They're trying to deal with the emergency of the day. And then the other day, the next day you could be on all day long. So it's really, in this era, we just have to be responsive to our clients' needs even more so than normal.
And Phil, you used to work with Kenya.
I did. Those were the best times, and certainly miss getting to see her every day, although we wouldn't be able to see each other in person now anyway. But yeah, we're in the same practice area. I do transactional and regulatory healthcare as well, and I'm at Haynes and Boone. And we work with, all kinds of healthcare providers and healthcare companies, helping health systems, hospitals, and physician practices, as well as, startup healthcare companies that are either closely held or going public or already public. So yeah, it's been an interesting time for our clients. It's counterintuitive. People always say healthcare is recession proof, but it's certainly not COVID proof. And we've seen a lot of elective procedures go down, which is a very profitable portion of our clients' business units. And so we've seen that go down, and a lot of them have to adjust and recalibrate.
Got it. And then Stephanie, you mentioned employment, but what firm are you with? And are you a litigator or consultant? How are you? What do you do in the area of employment?
I'm with Bradley. I do advice and counsel and litigation. Things have been very busy with advising on policies and unfortunately furloughs and layoffs that were necessitated by this pandemic. But then at the same time, we've got other clients who are still dealing with, harassment and discrimination litigation, FLSA, collective actions, all of that's continuing. So that's my practice, both advice and counsel and litigation.
Speaking of litigation, Judge Redmond, how are you doing during this whole COVID new normal?
Things are definitely interesting. The 160th District Court actually tackled one of the first COVID-19 related claims back in January of this year, before the government announced that it was an issue in this country.
Wow.
Yeah, the case is now disposed of and is no longer pending. It dealt with a pilots association filing an application for a temporary restraining order against a major airline seeking relief from the court to prevent the airlines from making their pilots fly to China due to COVID. And so the parties ended up coming to an agreement and grounding the planes, but I remember thinking that this virus would definitely impact the United States in some way. I didn't realize it would be 6 to 8 weeks later that we would receive a stay-at-home order and court hearings would have to proceed virtually. It's definitely been an interesting time for my colleagues and I to have to administer justice through a screen. But I can only imagine the challenges attorneys face trying to advocate for their clients. My motion docket has pretty much stayed the same. I hear about 25 to 30 matters a week. And we're currently using Zoom to host our hearings. I know some courts use Microsoft Teams. About 3 days a week or 3 days prior to scheduling the hearing, my court coordinator sends out an email asking the lawyers if they want their motions to be considered by submission or by Zoom hearing. And in most cases, attorneys still want to be heard on all issues. And so I give them that opportunity. I've had witnesses to testify and evidence offered and admitted through Zoom, which initially I thought would be a daunting task. But for the most part, it runs smoothly. The number one issue that may arise is related to the connection, internet connection, which is of course expected.
Yeah.
And so you should make it a habit to do a test run. I always ask the attorneys, or my coordinator sends out an email asking the lawyers to do a test run prior to their hearing with a Zoom link to make sure that their clients or their witnesses have a good internet connection so that everyone can be heard accurately, so the court reporter can take an accurate record.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It
Are we anywhere close to jury trials, or are we thinking 2021? Or I know we wait for the Texas Supreme Court to kind of guide us, but
right, and that's what the court is following, the Texas Supreme Court orders. I believe the 18th one was just issued June 29th. And so as of now, courts are prohibited from conducting in-person proceedings unless the matter is essential. As far as jury trials, we are not able to hold a jury trial until September 1st. Now, Granted, I think that's definitely going to be delayed, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. So, Phil, we hear a lot about women talking about working from home and having to juggle kids or whatever. How are you dealing as a father of two working from home? Going to the office?
Yeah. I'm not well. No, it's been fine. I fortunately have a great wife who is obviously immensely helpful, and I have a huge respect for women and mothers. I don't know how they do it, and so my job is a lot easier. I mean, I get to see my kids more often when I do work from home. When I go into the office, it's nice to be able to get away, to be honest. And so juggling and working from home, I would say, like I said, there are not the vast majority of people in our office, and I think in most offices, do exclusively stay at home and don't come in at all. And it obviously, like Stephanie mentioned, makes for longer hours. There are times where you feel like you're constantly working, and as lawyers, we are constantly technically on call. But, clients don't always put you up to task and challenge that or test that out. But during this pandemic, we've certainly seen that more because they have more time on their hands. They have different schedules, and so you see them contacting at odd hours of the morning and night as well. So it's been an adjustment period for everyone, and certainly for me and my family, we're just doing the best we can, and it's really a day-by-day thing. And I wish I had, a better schedule, but if anyone has the answer to how to do that, I'm all ears.
Phil has a great way of talking about how bad this is with such a beautiful smile on his face. This is great. This is fun. Kenya, what's going on in your house?
Like that meme of that dog that says, everything's fine while the fire around.
Well, I have some preteens. I have a 10-year-old and 12-year-old. I didn't think 10 was preteen, but now I'm starting to think they are already. This is a whole, things have changed over the years, but my 10-year-old is big into Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege, 2 girls, but my younger daughter is, she's down for all of that. So I have to go in and really to spend time with them. Sometimes I go in and watch them play Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege and see how many kills they get. That's the that's the quality time.
Bonding.
Right. But you do have, as you learn with children, you take whatever times that you can to have conversations, even when they don't know you're really having, good conversations. So we started doing that. We go on walks in the evenings, and that's a good way to get them out.
Yeah.
And also to get a little bit of exercise. So we've been doing that, and some puzzles, but trying to pull that in on the weekends or evenings when we can do it. But I am thankful that I don't have toddlers, because
Yes.
they are doing their own thing right now. It's really trying to make sure that I am, because you could very easily be 24/7 on this. There's always something to do now that you're at home. So trying to be intentional about spending time with them.
Yeah, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I'm telling people she's been social distancing for a while, so it's really not had any impact. But Stephanie, you have 2 kids, right? So how is working from home? Because is that home, or are you at the office?
This is home, and I have a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so it's been challenging. You have to sort of, carve out time and say, okay, mommy really needs to work, because my youngest doesn't understand that if I'm here, she's, I'm available. So, but it's been difficult, but it's not impossible. You just have to, be intentional about trying to set up some sort of a schedule and explaining what's happening and why our world looks so different.
Yeah. And Judge Redmond, how is it dispensing justice from your house? How?
It is very interesting, let me tell you. I have taken on additional roles, such as playing a teacher to my 8 and 9-year-old children, which has definitely been a challenge. When schools closed, I wasn't sure how my husband and I would juggle getting our work done and teaching our children their very challenging curriculum. And I'm not being sarcastic. 3rd grade math is not what it used to be. Before I could help my son with his math work, I had to teach myself the new way of solving math problems, and that was no easy feat. Natural sunlight and exercise is good. I try to get them out of the house, make it a point to spend a great deal of time outdoors. It's great for your mental and physical health at this time. And so whether it's bike riding, we go rollerblading, and even swimming often. And so I try to tire out those kids so they can give me some free time, because, their energy level is always on 1,000.
Yeah, true. Okay, so anybody that knows me knows I like to keep it real and give practical advice. So we have 139 minority or clerks that are on here. And I'm starting with you, Kenya. What are some no-nos about clerks using Zoom to have meetings within the firms or with the court that they're working with?
Well, that is the reality that we're in, but we have to maintain professionalism. And that's really a challenge, because we're so relaxed at home in some ways. We don't always get dressed to a T. We don't always do our hair to a T every day. But when we are presenting ourselves on Zoom, it's just like we're walking into someone's office or someone's court. So we want to make sure that the person still feels that you are competent and put together enough to handle whatever the communication is or whatever assignment is that they're giving you. So definitely be aware of your dress. I have seen a couple wrinkled t-shirts, and somebody just threw their hair in a ponytail on top of their head. And I know we do that, but not when we're trying to have a professional communication. So just being aware of your professional appearance as well as your surroundings.
Stephanie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to cut out distractions. You want the person you're communicating with to think they have your full attention. I know that's hard with kids and pets and TVs on the background, but to the extent you can, find a quiet area, let your family members know I'm on a work call and I really need some private time, and just make sure that you're giving your full attention and you've cut out those distractions.
Judge Redmond, have you had any concerns about the casualness of counsel coming on Zoom, which is in a formal legal proceeding?
Thankfully, it's only been on a few occasions. And just to piggyback on what Kenya said, I mean, your job as an attorney is to advocate for your client. And not only should your work product be on point, but you have to provide the whole package, which includes your presentation, verbally and physically. And now that we are appearing or having to appear virtually, it's very important to look professional. But like I said, it has not been the norm, but on a few occasions, I've seen attorneys with speaking roles appear in a t-shirt or with a beach background, which is cute, but it's not professional. And even if you don't have a speaking role during a hearing, you should look professional. You not only represent your client, but you represent your employer and yourself. And another thing that you should remember is that there's always someone watching. The public has a qualified right of access to court proceedings, and that has not changed due to COVID. And so we live stream all of our hearings on YouTube. So you definitely want to look presentable.
So Phil, to close this out, what are some pointers so people can put their best foot forward in this virtual world?
I mean, I would say look at these lovely presenters and how they present themselves and keep themselves up, and obviously your background, as Judge Redmond said, you can't have it. It's not impressive to have a fun background. I think there's a time and place for that, but you just have to know your audience. And when it comes to, I mean, you don't have to go and impress by going to half price bookstore and buying a bunch of books to fill up your background, make it look like you're, you're someone you're not. But I think you want to be, obviously, being presentable, being someone who looks like they have thought through what their background looks like and how they appear on screen. So I think, I know we'll talk about happy hours later, but in certain settings, sure, it's fine to be a little more casual, especially if the invite calls for it. But you really want to just make sure in the small little box that you have that everything just looks the way it should. I mean, and really anything outside of that box, you can have it be however you want. So, Tina, I think you were, yeah.
Yeah, I will say for those of us who are darker skinned, I actually have a little spotlight that I have on me because you will sometimes be too dark to be seen in the Zoom lighting is not always made for us. So be aware of the lighting as well so the people can see you and see your expressions when you're communicating. And I've also been on a lot of calls, not just Zoom, but just a regular phone call where people are washing dishes. I didn't know people wash this many dishes, but
Stephanie now came through the screen.
But be really cognizant because sometimes we're multitasking or we're on phone calls, but be really cognizant of doing those because it may not sound as loud in person as it does on the phone when it gets amplified. So I would advise against washing dishes while you're on calls.
And I just want to add one more thing. You don't want to miss out on a future opportunity because you didn't want to take an additional time, an additional 10 minutes to comb your hair, put a dress shirt and tie on. Mm-hmm. Keep that in mind.
And the good part about now is you don't have to buy a full suit. All you need is the top.
That's right. and really everything is cheap, right? Nothing we're saying is that's going to be expensive. You can have a backdrop, literally a white poster board, and just put it behind your, linen sheets, and it will really, whatever setting you're in, it will mask everything. And then in terms of, everything can be done on a very low budget. Yeah.
So Zoom happy hours. I can just sense from being a clerk at a firm or not really in court, that you wanting to build a relationship with the attorneys at that firm. So let's talk about etiquette during Zoom happy hours. Let's start with Stephanie.
Hey, the first thing to keep in mind is you're comfortable because you're in your own space, but you don't want to overdo it. So you still want to be professional. You do want to get to know people and so be more casual, but don't have too many drinks or, because you're at home and you don't have to drive. I think there may be some tendency to not be as careful as you would if you were out at a setting or a restaurant or a bar. So still be mindful of how much you're taking in. I think that's a good starting point. And then just be casual, get to know people. You can let your hair down. You can talk about your family and your interests, your hobbies, because you are having to make those impressions and forge relationships through a computer. So you don't have to be as formal, but still be professional, but open up a bit and let people get to know you.
Kenya, any other pointers about happy hours?
And I would say, even in-person communications and happy hours, any of that, be strategic about the things that you share. I always tell people in summer programs to decide at the beginning of the program, what are the things about you that you're willing to share? You should have personal stories. Not saying that all of your communications have to be scripted, but there are some elements of your past that don't all need to be shared. So I would say be careful about what you share, but it's a balance. You have to be open, but also be cognizant of the things that you're sharing, because I have seen some people overshare and it's problematic down the line, because that becomes more of the story about the person than the person themselves. But you do need to share enough about your personal life so that people have a full picture of who you are. Understand, lawyers talk. So whatever you share with one, everybody is going to know. So you can pick what stories you're going to share. You share them strategically with different individuals. And then when everybody comes together to talk about you at the end of the summer, they can put their pieces together and then have a complete picture, but it's a picture that you have strategically designed.
So there was one thing I saw at one of the happy hours where, you know, most people are working on laptops and they pick their laptop up and they're walking around and they're drinking. Okay, I'm getting older, so this could be an okay boomer moment. I mean, is that appropriate, or should they be sitting like we are right now and have their beverage, or is it okay to walk with their laptop through their house? Phil?
You know, I personally, I would not prefer that, because I get bad vertigo when I
get dizzy.
You know,
Oh.
So I can't, you know, on Zoom or WebEx, when you're in grid view, it just gets distracting. And you really want to stand out, but you don't want to stand out for the wrong reasons, right? So I would say try to be, you know, unless someone asks you, oh, what's that in your background? Show me. Then you might go bring your laptop closer, but otherwise there's no need to be jumping around from one place to another.
Okay, Stephanie, these are kind of softball questions, I think, but it's the happy hours at 5:30 and I got a quick workout in and I got my leggings on and my tank top. Should I show up for the firm happy hour?
I do not think that would be appropriate. I would throw on something a bit more conservative. I mean, this still is a professional environment. And if it's not something that you would wear out to a function for your clerkship, then it shouldn't be something that you're willing to appear on camera in. That's my opinion.
Okay, and should we be actually drinking during the happy hour? And if I like beer, am I, you know, in my can, or like, I mean, I literally want to give them practical advice because I know they're thinking about it. Should they be glug, 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 glug with the bottle of wine right beside them, Kenya? Because I think they're making mistakes.
Yeah, I think people need to know I am a lightweight. Like, people need to understand their own tolerance. So what I did always during summer clerks is I would have cranberry juice, because people could think it's cran and vodka or something. So I didn't have to have a discussion about was I drinking or not. I'd have some cranberry juice and put a little water in there. You can always drink after the call. So if you know that you may not have the highest tolerance, and even if you think you do, maybe your friends will tell you that you don't. So you need to be mindful and just have one glass, one cup, one beer during the call should be enough. But I would be mindful of that.
Okay, and there's probably younger minority clerks that have been rolling their eyes at us. So talking about, oh, they're just so stringent. But Judge Redmond, can you just give just some general advice that you would give for these young lawyers that this is their first legal experience outside of law school, and some of the things they should be considering?
I think the one thing that should definitely be on the forefront is that this whole process, you are always on an interview. That's how you should treat your clerkship, as an 8-week, 10-week, however long your clerkship will last, as an ongoing interview. So you always want to present your best work and how you appear in your appearance. And you must definitely keep that in mind, because they are always watching. Your senior partner, the senior associates are always watching your behavior. And so keep that in mind when it comes to your legal career. An additional nugget, once you start practicing, prior to going to court, make sure you know the local rules and the policies and procedures of that particular court. Spend additional time asking your colleagues about the judge. You will definitely go a long way. Judges are not all the same. One might require courtesy copies, another might want your documents in an electronic format. Some judges don't want lawyers approaching the bench, others welcome it. And so definitely know before you go, know exactly what you're getting yourself into prior to appearing for court. Before trial, go to the courtroom where your case is being held and learn how to use the AILMO and all of the technology you'll need. The last thing you want to do is waste the jury or the judge's time. Unfortunately for me, I had to learn the hard way as a young attorney and caused a 45-minute delay because instead of switching screens, I turned the device off. And if you know anything about county equipment, it takes forever to reboot.
I know what court you're talking about. Yep.
So just be proactive. If you have to spend hours drafting a motion for a senior associate or a partner, when it comes time to arguing in that motion, ask that associate or partner if you could sit in and watch the hearing or even argue it yourself. So just be proactive with your career.
Kenya, anything to add? What do they need to be thinking about right now? First, legal experience.
Well, and I will just note one of the comments that someone attending NECA, I actually know NECA, but she talked about knowing the technology, same as Judge Redmond is saying, whether it be the physical equipment in the courtroom, the WebEx, any of that that you're using, play around with it a little bit, make sure you understand how to use it and how to turn your camera on, make sure that you're being heard. Sometimes even fix connection issues while you're on. So do make sure you understand the specs of the equipment. But if it's the first opportunity to come to a firm, come in a virtual way and experience the work aspect of it, getting to know individuals, that is valuable. I think you will need to work a little bit harder in this environment to make sure that you're making the connections that you need to make. We have another comment in there from Sean Brown who says, there are ways that you may want to connect with other attorneys of color. How do you do that? How are you making sure that you at least have some contact with those individuals? Because it is important. And in many instances, the attorneys of color have been rooting for you before you even got there. So understand when you come, you are already, someone has already vouched for you. People are already rooting for you. And they're expecting you to do well. So your actions do affect the reputation of those who have vouched for you. So I don't think people always understand that it's not just you coming to the firm and performing in that particular moment. There are months and tons of discussions that have happened before you even get there. And someone has stood up in a meeting and said, you know what, Aisha's going to be great. I'm so excited about her. We had a great interview. Look at all that she's done. So, you know, no added pressure, but don't let us down. Make sure that you come, you show up, and you show up. You show up and you show out. And we're excited for you to be here, and people have worked really hard for you to be here. So make sure that you understand the totality of what's going on, both before you get to the job and after.
So Kenya, let me ask you about that point. Is it the clerk's responsibility if they want to reach out to the minority associate partner? A lot of times I feel like there's like this dance and who talks to who first?
Who makes the first move?
Who makes the first
junior
move?
high dance. Typically, the diversity committees are going to have some kind of event for you to come to. We have diversity related events as well as women's initiative events for the summer. So you will have those. And then you'll have a general introduction. And then I think it's on the clerk to say, hey, I'd really like to know more about this person. So call them, email them. Hey, can we set up a WebEx? Let's have a little more discussion over lunch or a happy hour or just a 30-minute call. Because you want other people to be able, at the end of the summer, when everyone's sitting around the table, you want someone to be able to tell your story. And it needs to be more than one person. And everyone should be a raving fan of yours by the end, from your personality, from your work product, from the way that you've conducted yourself through the summer. So it is a two-way street. There will be formal events, but the summer associate should take the initiative as well to reach out to others.
Thanks. Phil, anything to add? How do they put their best foot forward? First legal job?
Well, I would say the number one thing to do is to be proactive. You want to make sure that you are going to be set apart and stand out in a positive way. And like Kenya mentioned, all the programs that you have, attend each one, make sure that you are seen and heard, but don't be overly aggressive, and then follow up. Make sure that you reach out to anyone that you've made a connection with, or even if you didn't, make sure you let them know that you know who they are. Do your homework, do some research, and then just make sure that you can be as natural as possible on a phone call or Zoom call, WebEx, what have you. You want to make sure that you just make some kind of connection, even virtually, because it's possible. It's absolutely possible. It just takes a little bit more work. So be as proactive as you can.
Stephanie, anything to close out this topic?
Just to piggyback on being proactive that Judge Redmond and Phil have mentioned, if there's something you're interested in doing, either it's a subject matter or area of the law, I would say speak up early in your clerkship and say, this is something I'm interested in. Will I have the opportunity to work on this? Or if you really want to observe a deposition, speak up and let partners and senior associates know what you want to get out of your clerkship, which means you need to think about what's important to you, what kind of experience and exposure you want to get from the clerkship. Think about it and then talk about it up front so that you're advocating for yourself and then empowering others to advocate for you, to say, Amy mentioned she wanted to observe a deposition. Does someone have something coming up that she could attend? So I think thinking through what you want to get out of the program and then being intentional about asking for those opportunities will be impressive.
Yeah. And utilize your mentors. Utilize your mentors as well to be able to identify the appropriate way to approach certain partners or certain individuals within the practice, because they'll be able to help you navigate that as well.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, to add on to that, sometimes we're blessed with great mentors. I know I've had the good fortune of having great mentors in my career, and sometimes you're not. And so don't wait, definitely utilize the resources that you have, but don't wait for people to come to you with the project that you're looking for or the kind of experience that you want or need. Make sure you guys have such a small window now during this pandemic to be noticed and impressed. So you want to make sure that you are going to, I really want to reemphasize the importance of being proactive and going and getting it done. It might be cultural for some people to just sit and wait for that invitation or sit and wait for that project to come, but you need to get out there.
Yeah, and something Stephanie said made me think about it. Actually, sometimes you have more opportunities now to get to different things like depositions than you would if we were actually in the office. Because I know normally I am running around doing everything and I wouldn't have time to schedule that. But over Zoom, my clerks have been able to watch at least 7 depositions because all they have to do is be in front of their computer. But you have to be proactive to ask for those opportunities to get them, because it's even harder from a certain perspective that we're all in separate houses and not in the same office, and there's not that one contact area. So let's move into talking about ethics and confidentiality and professionalism. One thing that Chief Justice Carolyn Wright always tells young lawyers is protect your bar card with your life. And so I want to talk about, and I'm going to toss this to you, Phil. Are there special precautions that should be taken to ensure confidentiality when working from home?
Absolutely. We all have an ethical duty as attorneys to make sure that we put in place every single thing that we can. So whether it's making sure that your Amazon Echo device or Google Home device is on mute, making sure that right now there's nothing confidential being shared, so it's not a big deal. But when you're on a client call, I think, what Kenya has in terms of her earbuds, any kind of earbuds, to make sure that those around you aren't just hearing all this important information that is meant for your ears only. Closing your doors and making sure that you have the right environment and stuff. It's not just to make it nice and quiet, but it's really to protect your client. And some of us have just one other person that lives with us, or some of us have several, a big family. So you want to make sure that whatever your situation is, unless you live with yourself, just set up the right parameters.
And Stephanie, you all are dealing with, confidential employee records. What can you say about how we protect that working from home now?
I think it's really important to log on to your company system through VPN or however the IT department has advised. Don't just log on without those secure connections. It's important to change your passwords often. Pay attention to the alerts that come from the IT team. If there's strange emails circulating or things going on that you need to be aware of, don't just delete those emails. Actually read through them. Make sure you're taking all the proper precautions to keep that data secure. We, in our clerkship, we're making sure that, our clerks are provided with laptops and that they know how to access the system. So you want to make sure you're paying attention throughout those trainings so that you're doing that properly.
Judge Redmond, what advice do you give to these attorneys to remain focused and diligent throughout the workday with so many distractions?
Right, because of course there will always be distractions. We all have a personal life outside of our profession, and so it's incumbent on you to stay focused. And when I was a summer associate and a young attorney, the one thing that stayed on the forefront of my mind was that my work product was always a form of an employment application. And what I mean by that is your clerkship or internship is an ongoing interview to either get hired permanently or to get better quality work. And so you want to produce good work product. And in order to not be distracted by so many things that are going on, you should create a daily schedule, have a to-do list, and stick to it. Always create a daily schedule for your personal life as well. I know that's easier said than done, but particularly if you have children, it will help you with managing your time, and time management is definitely key.
Yeah. Kenya, what do you have to add to that?
I will say, and I just want to add one piece on the confidentiality and protection of privileged information. We obviously have a lot of privileged information, but depending on who you're working with, you also may have protected health information, financial information, and other PII or personal identifying information. So if you have information that's sensitive, make sure you're communicating with the attorneys that you're working with to make sure that you can even send. Sometimes you may want to send an email with that information in it. Does it need to be secure? How do you send a secure email? How is it supposed to be saved on your computer? Because you have certain security settings that you have to put on there. So really make sure that you are mindful when you have protected information like that. I am not as organized as Judge Redmond, apparently.
None of us
I have a to-do today Post-it. It usually has no more than 3 or 4 things on there.
Does it look like this right here?
It looks just like that. It looks just like that. So it's to do today. This has to get done today. And I usually do that, for each day. And for those of us assigning work, I try to assign if I get a project, I try to assign it the same day I get it, so it doesn't sit in my email box and then become an emergency for an associate. That's a good way to keep good associate partner relations. But trying to have a to-do today. And then I do the same thing with the girls, because I'm on calls all day. I can't be back there saying, do this at this time. I said, listen, these are the 5 things you need to do today. If they're not done by 4, I'm taking all your electronics and your phones, and you'll get it done when you get it done. So I'm trying to teach them some self-regulation as well. But a lot of it is because I just can't be back there every hour making sure they're doing it. So I've tried to focus and get all the small things done first thing in the morning, and then have the big things, have 3 or 4 things I need to do over the course of the day.
Stephanie, how are you doing with this self-regulation like Kenya talks about?
I am a list maker, and so I do make lists for the week, for the day, for the month. I do that for my personal, managing kids and household things. It doesn't mean I always check off everything on the list all the time, but it does keep me honest and intentional. And so it's a good way to manage time. I think I think lists are good for if that, you kind of have to try different things and find what works for you. Yeah. Different people do it differently, but you do need to try and be organized so that you're managing time. I know that, and when I was doing clerkships, you want to do such a good job. And sometimes that means you want to spend way more time on it than you should. So just organizing, talking through how much time should I spend on this, and planning will help you with time management and staying organized.
So Phil, how are you dealing? Well, first of all, do lawyers have traditional hours?
We do not.
And so what about that clerk that thinks, you know what, it's 5 o'clock, I'm done. What advice would we give that clerk?
I mean, everyone has different lifestyles. If that's the lifestyle that you want to lead, quite a lot of times, I mean, it just doesn't make sense for you may not want to be in a big firm, right? And that doesn't mean that you are working around the clock nonstop. You can certainly have a break and stop at 5, but know that you'll probably have to pick things back up later at night. So it's just a difficult schedule to manage, and everyone is trying to figure it out as they go. To say that you just have a hard stop at 5 and you're not going to look at your email, I mean, you're doing your client a disservice, you're doing a disservice to the people that you work with, but you're really doing yourself a disservice as well. Unless that's so important to you that you don't care where you work, then, that's certainly your prerogative, and everyone can decide for themselves where they want to work. Is that too
we were supposed to be nice.
We
were supposed to be nice.
Well, I'm coming to you, Kenya, as a partner at a firm. You send an email to an associate at 5:57. Traditional hours, they think they're off at 5. Should they respond, or what's the advice?
Yes, they should respond. And I'll say, I think once you understand that being an attorney is a career and not a job, then you understand that the hours are flexible. If you want to punch a clock, go work it in and out. You need to, there are places where you can punch a clock. And if that's the kind of job you want, then that's the kind of job you should get. If you want to build a career, I will tell you it takes many more than 8 hours a day in billable and non-billable time. We were even talking about, for us as partners to get clients and to get work, sometimes we've cultivated the relationship for 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. So when that person calls us with that matter, yes, we are going to respond, and we're going to be excited about it. And if you understand your role within the process, you as an associate are going to be excited too, because ultimately that's the goal of the enterprise, is to have clients, get work, do the work, do great work, and get paid for it. That last piece is very important, because you can do all the rest of it and it's really not going to work unless you get paid. But you want people to be happy paying you too, right? So in order to do that, you got to make sure you're delivering them a quality product. I know we had another question I did want to weave in related to those who may be going to school part-time, working full-time, and may not be in a traditional clerkship. I think you should focus on quality, not quantity. And I always think that. Find and identify the individuals who are influential within the legal community or within particular firms that you can have a 30-minute call with. If you can just plan to have 2 30-minute calls a week, and then maybe attend 1 or 2 events that you can meet other people and learn other things, then that would be efficient. But make sure that you are doing your homework and talking to others, and others can tell you, listen, this person, if they know who you are, they will connect you. They will let others know about you. You just need to make sure that you're using both your career services and any contacts that you have within the community. You guys can feel free to call me or contact me. I'm happy to connect you.
Great. Judge Redmond, can you tap back into your practice and talk about the type of hours that you put in at a firm?
Right. So before ascending to the bench, I worked for Baker Botts straight out of law school, and I worked some great, many hours, which was essential for me to gain the experience that I needed to be a litigation attorney. And so I was in the litigation division. And one thing that I did that helped my career tremendously was being proactive and seeking out the work and not just sitting behind the desk, accepting. Of course, I accepted all work that was presented to me. And just know that oftentimes as young associates, you will get the grunt work having to do the research and drafting memos and drafting motions, as well as some doc review. But if you're proactive and seek out the better quality work by producing good work product, then that will give you a lot of exposure. And so that's one thing that I try to do, was to be proactive in my career.
I will also say that there's sometimes a question, and I know I've had to have this conversation with associates, what's the big deal with 2,000 hours? Like, why do I have to work 2,000 hours? That's usually the objective at most firms. And talking to our career development, they said, you really need to explain to them that those hours represent experience. You just see more. And as all of us know, the longer you practice, the more you see, and the more that you have to really inform the decisions that you're making, the things that you're doing. So don't think about the hours just as the hours, because there's some people that pad their hours and do all this to say they got to 2,000. But those work hours, actually, that's our experience. We are the widget. And this is what you're selling. We are the widget. So you have to make your widget as great of a widget as possible. All the bells and whistles, as sharp as it can be, all of that. And those hours really do help cultivate that. So if someone only works 1,000 hours in a year and another person works 2,000 hours in a year, there is a very big difference in what they've seen.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk about the billable hour requirement can be 2,000, but that is not the number of hours you're actually working. Can you talk about that a little bit, Kenya?
Yes, especially if, depending on the practice area, us in these specialty areas like healthcare, we're like, listen, when we do 8 hours a day, it's a hard 8 hours a day, because we've done it on 10 different matters. It's not we just write 8.0 because we worked on one matter all day. We switch matters, you lose time doing that. Someone's gonna call with an administrative issue. We're dealing with billing, all of those other things that are non-billable that also take up the day. So we usually tell people to bill 8 hours a day, you probably need to be in the office 11. Do you think that's right?
Yeah,
That's right.
A small firm. And that's what's required to succeed. To get the work product out and for you to grow as an attorney.
Right.
I don't think it's really a difference between small firm and big firm in that respect. You got to hone your craft, and we're professional. This is a serious profession. People have hired us to represent them sometimes in the most dire straits of their life in regard to being involved in litigation. They can lose their company, or bet the business type litigation. So we got to be serious people, and that takes time to do that. So we're running low on time, but I want to make sure to hit on some really key parts. Phil, let's talk about what's the most important thing, which is your work product. Just give them some pointers about what their work product needs to look like.
Well, really, and I've never been in a law school environment during a pandemic, so I don't know what taking a test from home is like, but from what I've heard, it's a lot of times open book. meaning that your answers are a lot more polished when you take a law school exam. In the same way, in a firm, you working from home and having more flexibility and having, frankly, more time to work on projects, whether you use that time or not, I would say use it as much as you can and make sure that your work product is polished, make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's and that you don't have any typos. Typos are such an easy fix, and yet it's something that we see all the time, and it's something that should be remedied before it ever gets to a reviewer's hand. So make sure that you are looking it over, not once or twice, but just keep looking it over to make sure that it's in a perfect state, or as perfect can be when you send it out, so that any comments that come back to you really are substantive. And even that, I mean, do your best to, Google is your friend, and you guys all know how to research really well. So do everything you can to get it in a state that would be presentable to a client before sending it to a partner, because that's going to make you stand apart. And for all the time that you can't be in front of people rubbing elbows, you're able to do that through your work product, really. So let that speak for itself.
So Stephanie, what I heard Phil just say with my young minority clerkship ears is that I have to be perfect. Is that what he said?
That's not what he said. He's saying you need to do your best to stand out, do excellent work. I will add to that, make sure that you've actually done what you were asked to do. If you were asked to research something or answer a question, make sure your work product actually does that. If you're unclear about what you're being asked to do, don't be afraid to speak up and say, I just want to confirm, here's what I understand you'd like me to do. That way you are making sure that you're adding value. And that's one way to stand out and do excellent work. You do strive to be perfect, but that may mean that what you do is you're excellent, and that will still make you stand out among all of the others who are competing for a position and a job.
And Judge Redmond, I know there's never been an attorney who hasn't answered your question.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. So to the summer associates and young attorneys, use this time to practice. Yes, complete the assignment that was assigned to you. Answer the questions that were provided, because unfortunately, there are attorneys who have been practicing for 30 plus years who still do not answer the question asked of them from the judge. And so yes, take this time to practice and make sure that you are actually tackling the issues that are before you. I wanted to add one tidbit of advice regarding proofreading. Take a break between drafting your document and proofreading it, because oftentimes when you've completed your draft, you're mentally drained, and then to immediately go back and start proofreading you might miss easy errors and mistakes. And so take a break between the drafting process and proofreading your documents.
That's a good point. So as we close out, I'm going to start with Kenya. What is a piece of advice that you wish someone would have given you as you were embarking on your legal career?
Especially at the beginning, that is going to take you 3 times as much to do anything that you think it's going to take. And that sometimes plays into the proofreading and making sure you did solid legal analysis. So time management is so key. Time management is challenging at all levels for different reasons. But when you're starting out, there's just a lot that you don't know. So time management, making sure that you're giving yourself enough time to make sure you understand what the question is and make sure that you're answering the question. And use your resources. The other summer associates are resources. Ask them to proof it. You've looked at it 12 times, you just can't see anything else. Well, use your assistant if you have. I have a great assistant. Also, look at this one more time for me. Make sure I didn't miss anything. But use your resources. Be resourceful.
Phil, what was some advice you wish you had?
You just want to. You want to be someone that's reliable, right? You want to be the best advice I have for any law student or any attorney or any human being is to be adaptable, and obviously it is proving to be true in this environment that we find ourselves in. So be adaptable, be reliable, be someone that can pivot when you need to, and that doesn't just have to be in your career, but within a project, but someone that, a partner or someone will look at and say, that's someone that I know that I can turn to, and that person will turn around a great work product for me.
Great. Stephanie?
I'd say trying to see the big picture instead of thinking about things in short tasks or this one small part. If you can try and understand what the end goal or the big picture goal or objective is, it kind of helps you decide what role you play and do a better job at your role. And then it's also important to circle back and ask for feedback. What did I do well, and what could I have done better? And don't be afraid to hear and actually implement whatever constructive criticism you receive.
Got it. And to close out, Judge Redmond.
Just to be proactive with your career. Remember that this is your career and you are responsible for billing those hours. Don't think that the partner or a senior associate is going to give you all of the work that you need in order to meet your goals. And so be more proactive. Don't complete an assignment, a motion, or a memo, turn it in and forget about it. Follow up with the attorney who has who has given you the assignment. Ask if they need anything else for you to do. Ask to sit in on a hearing. Ask to even argue that motion. So just be more proactive with your career and seek out the information and exposure that you actually want to have.
Great. And I want to close out because I want to make sure I read Mary Scott's comment, because I think it's really good and a great way for us to close this out. She says, communication with those you work with and for is critical. If you have a conflict, tell the partners and the associates and set their expectations, not yours, theirs. Also, don't overpromise. Part of your job is making the person you are working for look good. That's how you get repeat business. Remember, the lawyers in your firm are your clients. I think that's a great way to close out today. I want to thank Judge Redmond, Stephanie Gaston, Phil Kim, and Kenya Woodruff for being here with us today. Everyone, please stay safe and please put on that mask. All right.